Hey, let us go ahead and get ourselves started. We have many things we'd like to accomplish today. All with the goal of basically getting you ready to kind of get them wrapped up in this class and wrapped up with your projects and ultimately to the point where you can share them with everyone, and we can all sort of benefit from your experience and what you've learned and the insights you've gained as you've tried to go ahead and put together this kind of very interesting building with all these different aspects that are all different systems that have to start working together. So we've been taking some nominations for some specific topics, some specific issues that people are having. What I'd like to do is actually start with just talking about the final project presentations and kind of just the expectation and really, how to get ready for that and really what we're hoping for, and answer some questions around that. And then go ahead and just answer some specific questions for people. It looks like we have some different issues about linked files and how we deal with it when this case happens that our linked file doesn't link up with the coordinates in our main project file and how you go through and fix that. Also this whole notion, if you have things in a linked file, what can you use from the linked file? Can we use spaces that are defined in an architectural file as part of our MEP analysis and kind of get some of those things working across. So we're taking lots of nominations for some specific things that are issues you may be having for this class or you may be having for other classes. We'll try and address some of those different issues. And then there's some stuff I was hoping to show you today, and we'll just go see where we get to that in terms of, towards the tail end of all this, I'd love to kind of show you a little bit more about, on the plumbing side, about sprinkler systems, and we did go ahead and complete something that looks a little bit more like a gray water system. So we can take a look at those things. But I also wanted to take a look at the whole issue of lighting and modeling lighting and ultimately how you can use that to do things like, either determine really what the lighting level is directly within the rooms that you're creating from artificial lights, or look at the whole issue of just daylighting and really whether your building is qualifying for like LEED daylighting credits based on the amount of natural light that you're providing in the different spacings. So there are a lot of kind of cool tools that are available to help us down that path. But let me roll way back though and just start with the whole notion of really next Tuesday and Thursday and really what we want to be doing kind of here relative to that. So here's the idea. You've all been working on these fantastic buildings that really are addressing sort of a very same site, a very similar design statement. What we'd love to do is have you, in the course of either next Tuesday evening or next Thursday evening, go through and present and share a little about your building. Okay, so in terms of presenting and sharing about your little building, really what we have is just based on the number of people, the amount of time we have available during the class sessions on those 2 days. What do we figure, about 10 minutes? Something like that, to go ahead and tell the story of your building. And because we only have about 10 minutes apiece to tell the story of the building, and we're all sort of familiar with the basic design problem, in terms of sharing that story, there's a lot of things you don't have to say. You don't have to say a whole lot about the site or the basic constraints, or you can pretty much jump right in saying, hey, we're all buddies, we know this problem. Let's go ahead and let me tell you some of the interesting things that I found in trying to work on this design problem. So the idea is, in those 10 minutes, to share either something you did that you think is really kind of cool, your little piece of special sauce that you'd like to kind of share with other people, because not everyone's been looking over your shoulder and is as intimately familiar with your building as you are. So if you have something really special that you want to share that's kind of cool and creative about your design or about some aspect of how the building systems are working together, please share that. If there's something about your building that turned out to be particularly challenging because as you went through and you tried to illustrate your fantastic architectural concept, it created issues for you that were hard to model structurally, or they created challenges for you from an MEP standpoint, or any of those things, go ahead and share those. What you're doing with this next session is not necessarily going through and documenting every last feature. It's not like the architectural crit where these are your final boards and everything has to be summarized, and in those 10 minutes you're going to try and whip through the entire presentation. This is more like, we're just looking over your shoulder, only you're up here, kind of sharing a little bit about the building. Okay? But it won't necessarily be the last time you have to have everything complete. Even in terms of next Tuesday and Thursday, you'll share, whichever night you end up sharing, your kind of share of view of the building at that time. in terms of completing the building, you'll have the rest of the week or even into finals week if you want to, but I don't want to encourage you necessarily to think about extending that far, to go through and ultimately post your models and any views and observations about the whole design process to the community. Okay, so ultimately, yeah, you're finally going to be rated on the whole, how complete, what you put into the community, and share there. Okay. But, a piece of that is really how well you're telling your story, like when you do get the opportunity to go ahead and share it. So, between now and next Tuesday and Thursday, don't necessarily focus exclusively on completing every aspect of your building. It's almost more important for you to kind of just think about, really, what is that story you want to tell, and then really what kind of views and what aspect of the model you can share to tell that story. Okay, as opposed to, not necessarily kind of stay up all night Monday, cramming, trying to get every last detail nailed down. It's really, maybe even out of the reviews, looking what other people are doing, you'll actually get some ideas for something that you want to incorporate, or, gee, that was a much better approach than I was using, something you want to change. But, it's really just looking over your shoulder for 10 minutes. Okay, so let's pause and stop there for just a second and see what kind of questions that raises relative to what you have to do. So, in terms of the format, the whole idea is, it's going to be your turn. Come on up. Share your building. Hey, here's what I like. I did this. This is kind of tricky. I wasn't quite sure if this worked out. Does anyone else have an idea about how you might have approached that? Okay, boom. 10 minutes. Take a break. Yeah, sit on down, rotate to the next one. Does that sort of make sense? Or yes. I see a question in the audience.
Does the 10 minutes include questions, or should I just talk for 10 minutes?
I think sort of view it as you're leading a discussion. So, within that, kind of allow, that, in fact, what I'd like everyone to do is not necessarily just wait to the end. If Amy says something, you're not quite sure, just jump right in at that point. Okay. But out of that, out of respect, we're going to try and make sure that no one rat holes you or rabbit holes you. One specific thing you don't get a chance to kind of talk about your whole building.
Okay.
Because there's always kind of a give and take to that. That's a fantastic question. I can spend 10 minutes answering that question, but I'm not going to now. Come see me after class. You're allowed to do that. In terms of doing that. Okay, so you get the sense of what we're going to be after? TAs. Have we figured? Where'd Lonnie go? Yeah. Have we figured out any sense of how we're going to choose people who are going Tuesday, Thursday, or how's that working?
No, it'll be random. We've asked people if they can't make it on either of the days to email us and let us know. So we haven't had anyone let us know yet. So
got it.
I think everyone's available.
So we're gonna send you a message saying you are the lucky Tuesday night person versus you're the lucky Thursday night person. Or how's that gonna work? Or we're gonna pull them out of the hat right on that day.
They'll know on Tuesday.
What's that?
Yeah. I mean, on Tuesday they'll know. I mean, they'll be sitting here. We'll be like, okay, Amy, Lucas, something like that.
Okay.
So we should all be ready on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, have something ready on Tuesday, to pull out of your hat in terms of doing that. Yeah. If you don't have to present till Thursday, that's okay too. It's really, but don't think that whatever you're presenting on Tuesday or Thursday is the final product. It's really just, it's kind of the way so much of the stuff really works in design. It's really just kind of, at this point in time, please present, kind of share what you got, and that's okay. Things have warts around the edges. Yeah, if anything was 100% complete and gorgeous and blah, 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 you probably could have been doing something else. I don't know, it's the fact that we're all working on works in progress is A-okay. So I don't want you to get all wrapped up about it. It's really more just, come and share. That sure makes sense? Yes?
And it'll be great if everyone can upload the presentations by Monday night. So we put it all on Glenn's computer.
Okay. Very good. So, and then in terms of presenting, you want them presenting live models? Do you want a lot of PowerPoint slides? What are you thinking?
PowerPoint slides.
Okay. So PowerPoint slides kind of with screenshots of sort of interesting aspects. Okay, got it. Sort of make sense? Not quite sure. Some people agree. Okay, So we'll see how, if questions come up and stuff like that, please let us know. And even in terms of what's going on this week, in terms of check-ins with people and getting ready for this, if you have questions, please holler at us and let us know. So if your building's you're thinking pretty good, but you're not quite sure what might be the best thing to feature, ask us. And we'll try and give you some guidance about what we think are sort of really cool issues. 10 minutes, it turns out, is not really very long to deal with. So, focus. If you get 1 or 2 really interesting issues out there, you're actually doing pretty good. Okay. Beauty. Okay, let us go ahead and talk about some specific things relative to all this material and how these files link together and just how this all works. And this whole notion of linking files, and some of the challenges that come up with linking files has come up because as we try to go through and pull things in from different systems, the whole notion of really how to link and some of the holes that we get into in terms of those start coming up. So let's address some of those issues. So one of the really kind of good questions that you guys came up with last time that I think I actually didn't give a very good answer to, but I sort of responded to in some mail later, was really this whole issue of, if you're going through and you start with the architectural file, should you add all your mechanical components directly to that, or you should put it into a separate file? Okay. And I said it's really kind of a matter of choice in terms of what you do, but let me kind of talk about one of the variations or one of the decision factors or ways to mitigate sort of whatever choice you do make that sort of comes up. To do this, I'm just going to go and open up the file that I was going to start with today, which is the, it's the session 17 start. But again, it could really be any Revit file, but let's going to talk about how we work with this. The idea is, as you go working with your architectural file, there's different architectural views, and even more importantly, there's architectural families that are loaded into the project, and those are super. In fact, let me go open a new architectural file. I'll say new project. I'll do it with the architectural template. So within this, you have walls and doors and windows and all those things. So you draw these things, and that's looking pretty good. But when it comes time to actually start running ductwork or something like that, if I work strictly with the architectural file, I can go ahead and add those things in. I can say, great, I want to put some ducts in. Okay, and there are some ducts available, but not really too awful much available. And in fact, if I go to the whole issue of the duct fittings and see what's available, it says, hey, there's no duct fittings in here. And the symptom you tend to see more than anything is that as you try to route things around, it doesn't do a very good job of connecting. Because Revit is really only as smart about connecting things as the things that it has in its toolkit. So if it doesn't have a lot of connections, if it doesn't have ways of routing things together, it really just doesn't know what to do. It says, hey, I can't find a routing solution for this. So if you're working with your architectural file and you would like to include mechanical components, here's one way to sort of work around that if you don't want to link them. Okay. If you want to basically bring the ability to have our mechanical modeling into your architectural file, here's what you can do. Open up another project, okay, using the mechanical template. So this is project 2. Project 2 with the mechanical template has a lot of good stuff in it. You go to the ducts, you go to the duct fittings. It's got a lot of good stuff in there. So what you would really love to do is grab all that good stuff out of the mechanical template and get it into your architectural file. Okay? You could load these in from the libraries one chunk at a time, and it would take you a while to do it, but you can kind of get them in there. But here's almost the easier way to do it. I'm going to go switching back over to that project 1, that little architectural file. Okay. If I'd like to grab all that mechanical stuff and get it over here, what I can do is, under the Manage tab, one of these options you rarely use, but it's ever so useful, is called Transferring Project Standards. And what that lets you do is, if you define wall types, you've defined ceiling types, you've defined floor types, or even families of things in a different file and you want to copy them across because they weren't in your template, you can say, let me go ahead and grab from some other project, and you can choose the things you want to grab. So you can grab everything. You can grab all the electrical components, the piping components, the ductwork components, the wall types. You can grab everything, or you can say check none and really just go after some specific things. So for example, if I was just going to do mechanical, I might just grab all these duct elements. Okay, but when you say okay, what it's going to do is grab all of them out of project 2 and bring them into project 1. So that's your quickie way of basically stealing pieces from another project and pulling them into your project. Okay, so just kind of a really nice kind of quickie way of doing that. So if you're having a lot of trouble routing or something like that, and you don't want to create a separate file, pardon me, I'll go back over here. I can just go through and choose these different elements.
So this is if you don't want to make it mechanical?
If you don't want to make it a separate file, you can do it that way. Copy them on in there, and when it gets all done transferring all those project standards, they'll also be available in your single file. Okay. That's one way to do it. But a lot of you went the other way and linked, which is actually the way we would often do it in industry. So because in industry, typically what will happen is the people working on the architectural file and the people working on the mechanical components are two separate groups, and they like a little bit of firewall between them, so that no one's changing things that they shouldn't be changing. So that's the linking them together in the kind of look but not touch. And we'll see if we can come up with an example that'll sort of make that work. So, great. Now that I've copied those things in to project 1, you'll see that under families, all those things are available. Okay, which then gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of doing things. Okay, so that's just something to get started with. Let me do kind of keep on going down this path for just a little bit. A question that came up in terms of linking files is the whole notion of really, if we do link files together, can we go through and use the elements of the architectural file to help define things in the linked file? Okay. So let's see if we can come up with a real simple example there. What I'm going to do is I'm in the architectural file right now, and I'm just going to put some rooms in. And these rooms don't really make a whole lot of sense, but it's just enough to get me going to test something. So I have a theory about how this is going to work, and like most of my theories, it may or may not be right. We'll see. So I've got this. I'm going to say this is my save as. I'm going to call this my sample architectural. Architectural only. Now, as I'm going to go through and create a linked file of this, one thing that I highly recommend doing is putting some sort of grid lines in here. Grid lines are a fantastic thing to include when you're linking things because it just gives you a point of reference. So if that's 1 and 2, and that is about to become A and B, let me go back and put the grid lines in over there. That's going to be B. Okay. That's just giving me a nice little frame of reference to work with. Okay, let me save that away. So here's my deal. I want to go through and now create a mechanical templated file, okay, that links to this. And we're going to purposely sort of go wrong a little bit and try to fix it. Okay, so that is, someone's already created this fantastic architectural file. I'm going to start a new mechanical file. Now, to do this, one thing I have to do is actually close the architectural file, just because as a single user, I can't keep a file open both for editing and link to it at the same time. I can't really do both. It likes to sort of understand it one way or the other. So I'm just going to close that up. I'm going to say, let's go through and create a new mechanical file. Looking pretty empty. There's not a whole lot going in here. What we're going to do is link in the architectural file. So I'll say insert, head out to link in another Revit file. I'm going to choose that architectural file. Here's the ever so critical point, is as you're linking them together, this whole notion of positioning. Center to center almost guarantees that it's going to fall out of alignment at some point in the future, just because that's the spatial center in the XYZ space of how high you are, how broad you are, and just as you work on your file, it's probably going to change. So rather than doing center to center, I almost always do origin to origin, just because my 0, 0, 0 and your 0, 0, 0, they're always going to stay hooked up to exactly the same place. So
Is there a way to check if you selected that after you already linked it? Do you need to go back and check if that's how you linked it?
it's more when you relink it back into the original, like do things show up in the same place. I don't have a good way.
Okay.
Although what you can do,
I'm pretty sure I did that. I'm just curious. So I can check.
actually, here's one way you can do it. Let me say origin to origin. Can I show you what to do? How you can. Okay. Every file actually does have an origin. You just don't kind of see it very well, or very much, because it's usually hidden from you. If you say visibility graphics in a plan view, you'll actually find that somewhere hanging around in here, is it under site? I think it's under there. There's this thing called the project base point. There's also this thing called the survey point. Let's turn those on and show you where they are. Okay, that little spot right there, that's actually the origin. So one thing to check is really, hey, in both of my files, does that appear to be in the same place? If it is, super. If it's not, not so good. If you happen to link files incorrectly once, you can go ahead and remove the link and kind of relink them again. Okay. But if you've already done a lot of work in a file that's linked not to origin, we're going to tell you how to go through and fix that, how to realign the file. Okay, because invariably that always happens to someone. But here's the idea. I got that linked file kind of hanging around in here. It's looking pretty good. What I tend to do when I go through and create the linked file is I would dearly love to have grid lines that match the linked file's grid lines in my file, just so I can always use those as points of reference for realigning things. So how you can do that is over here in my linked file, you can either kind of just copy them in manually. What I like to do is actually go to collaborate and say copy the elements from the link. I can choose that linked file and then do some copying of this grid line, that grid line. And this notion of copy monitoring, that's creating a copy that is actually, it's linked back so that if anything changes in the architectural file, I'll get notified that the change happened, so that next time I open this mechanical, if I need to sort of figure out whether I want to adapt to them, we can. But let's go ahead, and that's all I'm going to copy in for right now, and just sort of explore the first question about these spaces in the linked file, and then based on that, we'll also go into how we can go ahead and realign a file. So the very good question, here I am in my mechanical file, I'm ready to start putting my ductwork in here, this is all looking fine. I'll say, great, let's go ahead and I'll put some ductwork in. I'm going to put it, 9 feet off the floor. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and just start putting some duct in. It's a very poor job of putting duct in, but that'll work. Okay. We have started to do some mechanical design in here. We're now ready to say, great, I'd like to size up these spaces and really figure out, can I go through and do the heating analysis in terms of the loads on each of these different spaces, from a linked file. Because the idea is these rooms are here. You can see the rooms. The question is really, can we use those rooms in another file really as the basis? So let's check it out. And honestly, I'm not quite sure which way this is going to go, but we'll figure it out pretty quickly. Okay, so, I am so bad about this. Under Analyze, we have spaces. Okay. From what I'm seeing, it doesn't look like it's going to want to go ahead and grab. I'm looking at the spaces, but it doesn't seem to be kind of grabbing the corners in terms of what's going on. So, okay, in terms of automatically places, that doesn't seem to work. This highlighting boundaries doesn't seem like it's really happening. Place spaces automatically. It doesn't have a lot of information here. Okay, so I am saying that it looks like we can't place spaces in the linked file just kind of by default. But let's talk about that because there actually is a way. This is the next level in terms of doing this. Okay. If I can't place spaces based on the walls in the linked file, here's what I would really, really like. I'd love to have walls in my linked file that are in the same location as the walls in the architectural file, that if anything changes, will always follow the walls in the architectural file. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's almost like little dummies, little virtual walls that are really have the same location. And boy, I would sure like not to have to draw them all over again. Okay, because, it would just be a pain. So, let's see how we can do it. If you go back to that collaborate, excuse me, and go to copy monitor from the linked file. Turns out you can copy grids, that's kind of okay. You can copy levels, that's okay. But you can actually copy some other stuff in here too. Let's see what I can do here. You can actually copy, that's all these different categories. That's more the mechanical side here. Hang on, I'm trying to figure out the best way to show you this. Options, there it is, excuse me. You can copy grids, levels, columns, walls, and floors. Okay, so how would that actually work? What you can say is, great, okay, I'm gonna do some copying. And what I want to do is actually just copy that wall. Okay, I'm going to copy that wall. I'm going to copy that wall, that wall, that wall, and that wall. Finish. Let's see if this is actually working. In theory now, I should have a bunch of walls that are mirroring the locations of the other walls. Okay, and let me do a little visibility graphics. I'm going to just turn off that linked file. Walls still seem to be here. That actually looks pretty good in terms of what's going on. So now I think what I should be able to do is basically come back to Analyze, Spaces. Okay, and I can actually grab the spaces. Okay, so what you're doing is basically putting in like placeholder walls. Okay, that sort of makes sense? Yes?
Copy all the walls at one go.
You certainly can. What an excellent approach that would be. So let's go ahead and even do that. I'm going to go back to the copy monitor, just really to the beginning of the operation. I'm going to say, great, let's collaborate. We'll do the copy monitor from the link project. So I just backed up about 10 steps. Okay, so what I want to do is, you can say batch copy. I can choose which things I want to copy. That's just that's only doing that. Let me do it the other way. I'll say copy, I'll say do multiple things, and then from here, what I typically do is I'll go grabbing everything, but then I'll filter it so I'm only getting the walls. Okay, and that would get the whole bunch at the same time. And I'll finish that up, and actually it's there. Finish that up. So they're copied in here. Now, let's stop and talk about copy monitor for just a minute in terms of how it works, because there's always kind of the, how well does this work, and why are we copying monitoring as opposed to just copying? Let me save this thing away. I'll say sample mechanical only. And let's talk about copy monitoring. So I'm hanging around, that's looking pretty good. I'm going to close that on up. So what could happen in this whole scenario, just so you know, is that architect who's been working on this model over here could go through and change things on you. So for example, the architect could go ahead and decide that for whatever reason, that's the new position of the wall. Save that away. Let me close this up. So what happens now when the structural or the mechanical engineer opens up the project? It's like, whoa! Okay, something in here has changed. We need a little coordination review to kind of resolve this. So how does that work? You say, okay. You can sort of see right in there, there's two versions. There's the linked one and there's kind of my dummy one kind of floating around in here. So under collaborate, there's this notion of a coordination review with that. And we sort of get this choice here. There's some wall, the wall center lines is moved. So you really get this whole notion of what do you want to do? Do you want to reject the difference? Do you want to accept the difference? And actually, I often start to look back in the help system to really understand the implications of each of these different things. I believe the correct choice is to say actually modify my version of the wall so that it actually adopts the new center line of that. But again, looking to help to really kind of figure that out. Let me try applying that and see if that actually does what I think it's going to do. Yep, it moves them into alignment. Okay, so now we're aligned, we're ready to go. Hopefully now those spaces that I've defined are going to really adapt themselves and be up to space or up to the same locations too. Let's go to Systems or Analyze Spaces. Yep, so going to sort of adapt in there. So there's this whole notion about having these linked elements between different files and having them move around. And the big question is really, are you going to reject the change, which means you're going to have to come back later, or are you going to postpone the decision because you're really not in a position to decide right now. I want to have a phone call before I decide whether to accept or reject this. Because you might reject and say, you know, your version is just going to be different than mine. And that's okay. I'm not going to adapt my model to be the same as yours, but that'll probably create problems later on. So yeah, we just have sort of different ways to approach it. But that's the whole notion of copy monitoring, and hopefully that'll work for you in terms of making these spaces in a link file. So Amy, does that sort of work for you in terms of an approach?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, let's talk about the other scenario though.
I have one question.
Please.
For the roof, the ceiling or the floor or whatever, the space has to come up to the roof in order to send it into buildings.
Either a ceiling, it wants to be bounded on the top, and it'll be bound either by a ceiling plane or by a roof plane,
Okay.
or a floor above.
Okay, so I would just copy that into.
So yes, exactly. So, although let's think about that. Okay, because here, you want to set that up to be whatever the height is. High enough to definitely go ahead and hit something. But that's kind of a good question. So, let's go to copy monitor. A very good question. Collaborate. In terms of doing the copying, and I can get floors. It's interesting about ceilings aren't listed there.
Is there ceiling in the other one?
There isn't right now, although I think that it would be listed there. Yeah, I just don't think that's actually one of the things that gets copied automatically. So you might have to go ahead and put your own ceiling in this space. This is almost kind of one of those funny things, and we're not going to get to this in her class. That may mean that the mechanical engineer should own the ceiling
Yeah,
relative to this.
that's true.
Yeah, but yeah,
Okay.
because which actually may not be all that bad in that, since the ceiling tends to be the surface that has all the air terminals, the sprinkler heads, all that stuff. It may make sense for them to open them up. Okay. So let's talk the other scenario. What happens if you actually get your files aligned incorrectly, and how you go through and fix that? Because actually, it is kind of a tough problem. And invariably, people run into this. So let's see if we can actually make that happen. So what I'm going to do, we happen to have a volunteer in the class who has lent me his files. So let's see if we can kind of figure this out. So we have the project. Let me kind of take a look at this. Any commentary you'd like to provide, volunteer? I got.
It's a three-floor building. The third floor is completely open to the outside. It's more like a deck roof. And there's two big atriums on the north side. And the reasoning behind that is to let a lot of natural light in.
Cool.
The offices and rooms, most of the stuff is on the south side, and the reason why there's no windows on the right is because that big corner is used for exhibit rooms, and I'm just assuming the exhibits are like museums where there are no windows.
Sure. You're trying to keep the daylight out, or not the daylight, the sunlight, the sun's rays, which are going to beat down on my exhibits. And
the top is, and there's like a little a bridge on the left that goes out. I'm gonna put like a little go out there.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. So we got your fantastic architectural vision that you're going to be sharing with us. We're going to take a look at your mechanical system and bring these all together. And here's what we want to do in terms of ultimately kind of figuring this out. Let's even, as a starting point, just to kind of debug this a little bit, let me go to, you have your nice grids right there. They're looking pretty good. Fantastic. You got these fantastic looking grids here. Check them out. They're all hanging around, looking like, they're on the like the wall lines there. So we're going to be able to use these to kind of help bring everything back together. Just so you get some sense of really, where the project base point is, let me go through and just turn that on. We'll go to the site. It's really out there somewhere. Which almost looks sort of like where your mechanical system ended up showing up. Beautiful. Okay, hold that thought for just a minute. Okay, let's go over and open up instead your mechanical file. I'll say that. It's fine. We'll open up okay, so you got this thing. It all appears to be linked ever so nicely. Things really look like they're in exactly the right location. Okay, but let's check this out. When we say, let's take a look at where the project base point is. Site. Okay, it's actually much closer to the building. So what you're really seeing is when you try to link those two buildings back together, they're trying to link based on this point, and what's happening is the ductwork system is showing up outside the building. Because it's in the same position. If those 2 points were aligned to each other, it would all be in the same position, but it's just not quite there yet. Okay, so here's what we got to do. This is my thing where I always say that it basically involves standing on your head and kind of like doing all sorts of bizarre things. But I actually have a little kind of thing put together that talks about how we do this. Okay, we're going to open the model that we'll use to determine the master coordinate system. Super. Link to a related model using origin. We'll probably be okay. We need to transfer this in. Publish the coordinates to the host model. It's a survey point. You can move the project, go to the shared survey point. Okay, it basically gets to, we're going to take the coordinates from one of the projects and sort of ship it over to the other one. And then sort of move things around relative to that. Okay, once we ship the coordinates over, now the linked model has the right coordinate system. Okay, open the linked model. Make the survey point visible, relocate those two things, move it to coincide with the survey point. Okay, save the link model file, then you can bring it back together. Okay, using origin, you want to make the, okay. Let's see if I can put that all to work for you. I always have to remember or go back and review this because it's confusing to me too in terms of how it works. Let's go ahead and not save that for right now. What I'm going to do is go back to open up your on-site file. Okay. Just look at it from the top, for example. What I'm going to do is link back in. So as you did, actually, is it already linked in there? Let's see what it is. No, not yet. So I'm going to link it on in here. We'll say insert, link the Revit file. Going to go out and grab your mechanical file. I'm going to say let's do it origin to origin. Okay, which theoretically should work, but it's going to be a little bit strange. They're off. Okay, no worries. We're going to go ahead and fix that. So let's go ahead and just save this away right now. They're linked, but they're linked in two different places. Okay, what we are going to do is go back over to the Manage tab, and this is where it always gets dicey in here. Is it publish the coordinates or acquire the coordinates? I always have to go back and kind of look at this twice to kind of make sure I'm doing it right. Now that it has the, okay, publish the coordinates of the host architectural model to it. So say publish coordinates and select the linked model object. Beautiful. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say publish some coordinates. Did I get that right? Publish the coordinates to that. Okay. I think that should actually be okay. Okay, we've published it over there, so that actually should be in pretty good shape. Let me go ahead and save this away. You've changed the position. What do you want to do? Save the new position back to the link file? Yes. Because what I basically want to do is let the mechanical file know that there's a difference between what it thought the origin is and what the new origin is. Okay, super. First step is just publish. Close that up. Then we go back over to the mechanical file. Yeah.
Just on HVAC,
Yes.
there's a. How do I connect the second floor ducts down to the AV system on the first floor?
Sure. Let's talk about that. That we can actually solve a little bit easier. So, for example, you're trying to go through and just connect things between the levels. Let's go. Yeah.
The corner top left.
Hang on. So back over, let me switch over. Let's zoom on in. So,
To the right, there's the VIP box.
you're trying to bring all those down.
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, you want to get the end of the blue duct coming on down?
Yeah.
Something like that. Let's see if we can make that work. Okay, so in terms of a duct, we normally go pulling on out, and it's just pulling in the XY plane in terms of what you want to do. What you want to do is with the offset. The offset of this is currently at like 9 feet or something like that. What you can actually do is just type in another value right here. Okay, and that'll drop it. Okay, and I'll go ahead and just kind of do that. And that was not exactly neat in terms of what's going on. So let's try that again. The idea is if you just go through and put another height in there. What will happen is I'm trying to get it to stick without having to place another piece. That's basically what I'm up to right now. Okay. I just want to create a vertical pipe in there, so I'll say 4. Come on down. I don't want to click again. I just want to apply. It's doing its thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, beautiful. Let's go ahead and change that also so that as opposed to return, that's also supply, just so it's considered part of the same system. And now you ought to be able to kind of pull on down and connect on in. Okay, so the big thing about having a vertical duct versus running a horizontal duct is all you got to do is, in the same sense, let's do it to the other piece over here. We'll say that, from this piece over here, if you want to start at that point, as you start pulling out, but what you end up doing is just putting a different kind of dimension in here. Now it's going down to 4 because that's the last thing I typed in there. If I why does it fight me? I'm going to think about the precise nuance in terms of closing that out, because it's not an escape. The return would want to make it happen, but I am so bad about trying to do this consistently. Okay, 4 feet, it's coming down, that looks good. But then that's going ahead and creating a bunch more pieces. I swear I want to be able to just hit the enter, but it's not doing it. We've got the 4 feet coming down. You say the apply, that's all fine. Oh, there it is. Hit the apply twice. That time it did it. Once you have that, now you can go back and, again, sort of link them together. Did I get it? I think I did. Nope, not quite. Okay, now it did the routing. Okay, so the big thing is just type in a different offset for the end of the pipe, and then it'll go ahead and create a vertical pipe. Same thing will work with water pipes or with ducts. Okay, let me do this. Independent of kind of the whole issue of realigning the file, and we'll get to a point of that, let's take a look at just a couple of other different specific little system things that'll hopefully give you just a little more fuel to operate on, and see if we can get those solved. So what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and just cancel out of this.
Can I ask a question really quickly?
You certainly can.
Like with this system, you just had, I think, one air handler, like on one floor. And
Yes.
then the ducts going up. Does it make sense to have an air handler on each floor, or should we just have one per building?
It really gets to, it's your overall strategy. Very often it will be a single air handler in one location, down at the bottom or up on the roof or something like that. And then there will be a series of different valves that control the amount of volume flowing through each of the different floors based on what their needs are. So it's quite common to have like one big air handler, depending on the size of your building. It's pushing all the air, and then just valves are controlling the actual amount of flow to each of the different branches on the different floors. So that's okay. It's all just kind of a volume thing. Because what happens is the longer you go till you get towards the air handler, kind of the bigger the ducts are going to have to be that come off of it, and you'll start having just inefficiencies. So it really just kind of depends on your overall strategy. Okay.